It is with a trembling hand that I write this entry. I arrived in the small valley of Oakhaven 3 days ago, expecting a quiet stop on my long journey. Instead, I found a ghost town. 7 small cottages stand in a silent circle, their doors left ajar as if their owners had just stepped out for a moment. But no one is here. The air is heavy and still, broken only by the rustle of dry leaves skittering across the dirt path. A half-eaten loaf of bread sits on a table in one home, a thick layer of green mold now its only companion. It feels as if time itself stopped here, leaving everything frozen in a state of hurried departure. My guide, a local man named Thomas, refused to come any further than the ridge overlooking the village. His face was pale, his eyes wide with a fear he could not hide. He told me stories, fragmented whispers of a curse, of a wrongness that had settled over this place. He spoke of the families who lived here, the millers, the Cartwrights, the bakers, all gone in a single night. They left behind their tools, their clothes, their animals, everything. It makes no sense. People do not just vanish, leaving all their worldly possessions behind. Something terrible must have happened, something so frightening that it drove them into the unknown with nothing but the clothes on their backs. I walked through the first cottage, the floorboards groaning under my weight. A child's doll lay face down in the corner, its simple cloth body covered in dust. In the next house, a woman's shawl was draped over the back of a chair, waiting for a shoulder that would never return. The silence is the most unnerving part. There are no birds singing in the trees, no insects buzzing in the tall grass. It is a profound, unnatural quiet that presses in from all sides, making my own heartbeat sound like a drum. I feel like an intruder, a trespasser in a place that is holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. My curiosity is a powerful force, often overriding my own sense of self-preservation. I have to understand what happened here. Where did 7 families go? Why did they leave in such a rush? The scene is one of pure panic, a frantic exodus that left no time for packing or goodbyes. As I stand in the center of the deserted settlement, a cold dread washes over me, a feeling that I am being watched by unseen eyes. The loneliness of this place is a living thing, and it clings to me like a shroud. I will stay for a time. I must find answers, no matter how unsettling they may be. At the very heart of the abandoned village sits a well. It is not like the other old, moss-covered structures I have seen in this region. This one is different. The top several feet of the stone ring are new, constructed from freshly cut granite that stands out starkly against the weathered stones below. The mortar is clean and white, the work of a skilled mason, and it looks as if it was completed only recently. Why would a village on the brink of disappearing spend time and resources reinforcing its well? It is a puzzle that deepens the mystery of this place, a question that hangs in the silent air with no one to answer it. Before he left me, Thomas had pointed a trembling finger toward the well. He called it the sealed shaft and warned me to stay away. The villagers from the surrounding area, he said, are terrified of it. They believe it is a source of bad luck, a gateway to something ancient and malevolent. They speak of strange whispers carried on the wind at night, seeming to rise from the well's dark mouth. They say the water drawn from it turned bitter and warm just before the families of Oakhaven disappeared. Their fear is so strong that they will not even speak the village's name aloud anymore, as if the very words might invite the curse into their own homes. I approached the well cautiously, my boots crunching on the gravelly ground. A thick wooden lid reinforced with iron bands covers the opening. It is heavy, too heavy to be moved by a single person with ease. It feels less like a cover to keep out leaves and more like a seal meant to keep something in. I placed my hand on the new stonework. It was smooth and cool to the touch, a stark contrast to the rough lichen-spotted stones beneath it. The craftsmanship is excellent, but the purpose is what confounds me. It feels like a fortification, a desperate attempt to contain a threat that was already bubbling to the surface. My friends who traveled with me this far have also refused to enter the village. They wait for me back at the main road, sharing the locals' deep-seated dread. They think I am a fool for staying, for tempting a fate that has already claimed 7 families. But the pull of the unknown is stronger than my fear. The well sits there like a silent sentinel, guarding a secret. The new stones are a clue, a piece of the story that I must decipher. What were the villagers trying to keep down? Or, a more chilling thought began to form in my mind, what were they trying to keep out? My investigation of the immediate village yielded few new clues, so I decided to broaden my search. On a small, windswept hill just beyond the last cottage, I found what was left of the old settlement. Here, the crumbling stone foundations of much older homes were nearly swallowed by weeds and earth. This was the original Oak Haven, abandoned long ago for the newer site in the valley. It seems this land has a history of being forsaken. Near these ruins, I noticed the trees. They were gnarled and stunted, their branches twisted into unnatural shapes, as if they were recoiling from something in the soil. Their leaves were a sickly shade of yellow, despite it being late in the season. A short distance from these strange, crippled trees, I stumbled upon the village cemetery. It was a small, forgotten plot of land, enclosed by a low, collapsing stone wall. Most of the headstones were ancient, their inscriptions worn away by centuries of wind and rain. They tilted at odd angles, like a congregation of stooped figures listening to the earth. The names I could make out, Blackwood, Thorn, Ashworth, were not the names of the families who had just vanished. These were the long-dead ancestors, the first settlers of this lonely place. The air here felt even heavier, colder, and a profound sadness seemed to emanate from the very ground beneath my feet. As I walked among the graves, I noticed something peculiar. Near the center of the cemetery was a large, flat slab of granite, different from the simple headstones surrounding it. It bore no name, no date, only a series of deeply carved symbols that I did not recognize. They were geometric and angular, unlike any writing or decoration I had ever seen. The stone was partially covered in moss, but it was clear that it was meant to cover a significant plot, perhaps a tomb or a vault. It felt important, a focal point in this field of forgotten souls. Why was one grave so different, so anonymous, yet so deliberately marked? A strange feeling came over me as I knelt to trace the symbols with my finger. It was a sense of deep antiquity, of a secret buried for so long that it had been forgotten by memory and history itself. The stunted trees, the abandoned foundations, this marked but nameless grave, they were all pieces of a much larger, older story. The recent disappearance of the Oakhaven families felt less like a new tragedy and more like the final chapter of a book that began long, long ago. My fear was now mixed with a sense of awe. I was standing on ground that held a powerful secret, and the well back in the village felt inextricably linked to it. By late afternoon, my curiosity had won its battle with my fear. I had to know what was inside that well. Returning to the village center, I found a discarded crowbar near the blacksmith's forge, as if it had been dropped in a hurry. With considerable effort, I managed to pry the heavy wooden lid off the well's opening. The sound of scraping wood echoed unnervingly through the silent village. A wave of stale, earthy air washed over me, but it was not the damp, cool air I expected. It was strangely warm, carrying a faint metallic scent, like hot rock or cooling iron. It was an unnatural warmth that had no business coming from the depths of the earth. Peering into the darkness, I could see nothing but the black void. I lit my lantern, its golden glow pushing back the shadows only a few feet. The stonework continued down as far as the light could reach. I had brought a long coil of sturdy rope with me, and after securing it firmly to the base of the well's stone ring, I took a deep breath and began my descent. The rope felt rough in my hands, and the stone walls were slick with a thin film of moisture. The silence of the village was replaced by the sound of my own breathing and the soft scrape of my boots against the stones. The world above shrank to a perfect circle of grey sky. As I lowered myself deeper, the change in the stonework became obvious. The top section, the new part, was perhaps 10 feet deep. Below that, the stones were much older, covered in moss and worn smooth by time. But then about 30 feet down, the construction changed again. The stones became massive, perfectly cut blocks of a dark, unfamiliar rock. They were fitted together so precisely that not even a knife blade could slip between them. It was here that I saw them, the same strange, angular symbols I'd found on the tomb slab in the cemetery. They were carved into the walls in repeating patterns, spiraling down into the darkness below. A low, resonant hum began to fill the air, a sound that I felt more than heard. It seemed to vibrate through the stones and up the rope into my hands. The warmth intensified, pressing in on me from all sides. It felt like descending into the throat of some great sleeping beast. My lantern light flickered, casting dancing shadows that made the carved symbols seem to writhe and twist. A sudden, inexplicable wave of dizziness and nausea washed over me. My nerve broke. I scrambled back up the rope as fast as I could, my heart pounding in my chest. I did not stop until I was standing on solid ground again, gasping for the cool, clean air of the surface. I sealed the well again, sliding the heavy lid back into place with a final, booming thud that seemed to shake the very ground. Though the physical entrance was closed, the experience remained wide open in my mind. I retreated to one of the empty cottages to spend the night, choosing the one that seemed the least disturbed. I built a small fire in the hearth, its crackling flames a welcome companion against the oppressive silence of Oakhaven. But honestly, the warmth of the fire could not chase away the chill that had settled deep within my bones, a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. The memory of the humming warmth from the shaft was a constant, unsettling presence. Sleep did not come easily. Every creak of the old cottage, every rustle of the wind outside sent a jolt of anxiety through me. I kept seeing the strange symbols from the well and the cemetery, their sharp, geometric lines burned into the back of my eyelids. I tossed and turned on the simple cot, the rough blanket doing little to comfort me. Outside, the moon cast long, skeletal shadows that danced like specters across the abandoned village. I felt an overwhelming sense of being watched, not by a person, but by the place itself. The valley felt alive, aware of my intrusion and deeply unwelcoming. At some point in the dead of night, I was startled awake by a sound. It was a low, rhythmic thumping, faint but clear, coming from the direction of the well. It sounded like a giant, slow heartbeat pulsing from deep within the earth. I sat bolt upright, my own heart racing to match the subterranean rhythm. I strained my ears, pressing them against the cold glass of the window pane, but the sound had stopped as suddenly as it began. Was it real, or was my exhausted mind playing tricks on me? I could not be sure, but the feeling of dread it left behind was all too real. The rest of the night passed in a state of tense wakefulness. The initial mystery of the vanished villagers had now been overshadowed by a much deeper, more primal fear. The well was not just a well, it was something else entirely. The new stones, the symbols, the warmth, the humming, it all pointed to a secret that the former residents of Oakhaven had tried desperately to contain. By morning I felt drained and shaken, but my resolve had not weakened, it had hardened. The strange events of the night had not scared me away. They had only deepened my conviction that I was on the verge of a profound discovery. The sun rose, painting the sky in shades of grey and pale pink, but its light did little to dispel the gloom that hung over Oakhaven. I felt a strange compulsion, an irresistible pull drawing me back to the centre of the village, back to the well. It was not just curiosity anymore, it felt like a summons. My mind screamed at me to pack my things and leave this cursed place behind, to run back to the safety of the main road and never look back. But my feet moved, as if of their own accord, carrying me across the dew-dampened ground until I stood once more before the sealed shaft. The events of the previous day felt distant, like a dream, but the fear was fresh. My hands felt clumsy as I once again used the crowbar to heave the heavy lid aside. The same wave of warm, metallic-smelling air washed over me, but today it felt different. It felt expectant. There was no humming sound this time, only a profound and waiting silence. It was as if the shaft was holding its breath, anticipating my return. I checked the rope, ensuring it was still secure, my hands moving with a mechanical purpose that felt detached from my own fearful thoughts. I knew descending again was reckless, a foolish defiance of the clear warnings my senses had given me, and yet I could not stop myself. I lit my lantern, its flame seeming small and fragile against the immense darkness below. Taking a steadying breath, I gripped the rope and began the descent once more. The familiar scrape of my boots against the stone, the shrinking circle of daylight above. It all felt like a repeat of yesterday's folly. I passed the new stonework, then the old, mossy section. Soon I was surrounded by the massive, perfectly fitted blocks of the lower shaft. The strange symbols spiraled around me, their angular forms seeming to mock my intrusion. The air grew warmer with every foot I descended, the heat clinging to me like a damp blanket. This time I pushed past the point where I had turned back before. I forced myself to ignore the growing dizziness, the slight tremor in my hands. I was determined to see what lay at the bottom. I descended further and further, the circle of light above becoming a tiny, distant star. The walls around me were now almost hot to the touch, and the silence was so complete that I could hear the blood pounding in my ears. The shaft seemed endless, a dark throat leading down into the very bowels of the earth. I felt a growing sense of trespass, the feeling that I was entering a place where no human was ever meant to be. I must have descended over 100 feet, far deeper than any normal village well should go. The heat was now intense, making sweat bead on my forehead and sting my eyes. The lantern light seemed to be swallowed by the oppressive darkness. Just as I began to wonder if the shaft had a bottom at all, my boots touched solid ground. I landed with a soft thud on a floor of the same smooth, dark stone as the walls. I had reached the bottom. I held up my lantern, its light revealing a circular chamber about 20 feet in diameter. The air was thick and heavy, and the silence was absolute. As my eyes adjusted, I saw that I was not entirely closed in. On the far side of the chamber there was an opening, a low, arched passageway leading away from the bottom of the well shaft. It was not a natural cave, but a deliberately constructed tunnel, its entrance framed by the same massive, perfectly fitted stones. The same angular symbols I had seen on the walls were carved above the archway, like a nameplate for a door to nowhere. A faint, almost imperceptible draft of warm air flowed out of the passage, carrying with it the same strange, metallic scent, only stronger now. It was an invitation into an even deeper darkness. I hesitated for a long moment, my instinct screaming at me to climb back to the surface. This was no well, it was an entrance. The villagers had not been drawing water from here. They had been guarding something. The new stones at the top, the heavy lid, it was all a desperate attempt to seal this place away forever. But what were they sealing? My hand went to the small journal in my coat pocket. The desire to document this discovery warring with the primal urge to flee. The mystery was laid out before me, a dark path leading to an unknown answer. Could I turn back now, knowing that this passage existed? With my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs, I took a step forward, then another. I held my lantern high and peered into the tunnel. It stretched into blackness, the walls smooth and unbroken. The stones under my feet were unnervingly warm, like flagstones that had been basking in a sun that never shone in this place. The heat was not threatening, like a fire, but it was deeply unnatural. It was a dry, ancient warmth, as if the stones themselves were alive, pulsing with a slow, dormant energy. I took a deep breath of the thick, strange air and stepped across the threshold, leaving the relative safety of the well shaft behind. The passage was narrow, forcing me to stoop slightly as I moved forward. The floor was covered in a fine layer of dust, as soft as flour, which puffed up in little clouds around my boots with every step. The warm stones of the walls seemed to absorb the sound. My footsteps were strangely muffled. I held my lantern out in front of me, its light cutting a small, trembling circle into the immense darkness. The tunnel went on and on, curving gently to the left. There were no more symbols on the walls here, just the endless, smooth, dark stone. The air was still and close, and the silence was so total it felt like a pressure against my eardrums. After walking for what felt like an eternity, but was likely only a few minutes, my lantern light fell upon something that made my blood run cold. There, in the undisturbed dust on the floor, were footprints. They were not my own. They were fresh, the edges of the impressions still sharp and clear. They were made by bare feet, the shape distinctly human. But they were leading away from the well, deeper into the tunnel. My mind reeled. Who could be down here? The village was abandoned. The well had been sealed. No one could have come down after me. A horrifying realization began to dawn on me. The footprints were not from someone who had followed me down. They were from someone, or something, that was already here. Had the villagers not all escaped? Had one of them been trapped down here when the others sealed the shaft? Or was it something else entirely? The footprints were not frantic or hurried. They were placed with a calm, steady gait. It was as if someone was taking a leisurely stroll in this impossible underground place. The sheer absurdity of it was terrifying. I was not alone in the darkness. I followed the tracks cautiously, my lantern held high, my senses on high alert. Every shadow seemed to move. Every flicker of the flame seemed to reveal a lurking shape just beyond the reach of the light. The prints continued on, a silent testament to another presence in this tomb-like silence. Then I saw another set of prints. These were heading in the opposite direction, back toward the well shaft. They were just as fresh. Whatever was down here with me had walked into the tunnel, and then at some point it had turned around and walked back. My heart hammered in my chest as I realized the terrible truth. Our paths might have crossed in the dark. That was the moment my courage finally shattered. The thought of being in this confined space with an unknown entity, of passing it unknowingly in the suffocating darkness, was more than I could bear. The mystery of the footprints was a door I was not willing to open. I turned and fled. I ran, stumbling through the narrow passage, my lantern swinging wildly, casting chaotic, dancing shadows on the walls. I did not look back. I did not want to see if I was being followed. The only sound was my own ragged breathing and the frantic pounding of my boots in the thick dust, erasing the very tracks that had terrified me. I scrambled back into the circular chamber at the bottom of the well and did not pause. I grabbed the rope and began to climb, my muscles screaming in protest. The ascent was a blur of terror and exertion. I pulled myself up, hand over hand, my gaze fixed on the tiny point of light that was the world above. The warm, heavy air of the depths seemed to cling to me, reluctant to let me go. When I finally hauled myself over the edge of the well and collapsed onto the solid, sun-warmed earth of the village, I felt as if I had been reborn. I lay there for a long time, gasping for air, my body trembling uncontrollably. I did not linger. With newfound strength born of pure fear, I heaved the heavy wooden lid back over the well, the final thud echoing like a closing coffin. I did not even retrieve the crowbar. I gathered my belongings from the cottage in a frantic rush, my only thought to get away from Oakhaven as quickly as possible. I did not look back as I hurried up the ridge, away from the silent cottages and the stunted trees. I did not want to know what secrets lay at the end of that dark tunnel, or to whom those footprints belonged. Some things I now believe are buried for a reason. I write this now from the safety of an inn many miles away, but the memory of that place will never leave me. The warmth of the stones, the strange symbols, the footprints in the dust, they are seared into my mind. I finally understand the fear of the locals. I understand why the villagers of Oakhaven fled without a backward glance. They did not run from a threat they could see. They ran from a secret they had uncovered, a secret they tried to seal away. Some mysteries are not meant to be solved. Some shafts are meant to remain sealed, and some secrets are best left to the darkness that guards them.